The desert should have been silent. Nothing alive had walked here in thousands of years, or so we thought. But then, under the blinding white light of a New Mexico sunrise, a set of footprints appeared, small, delicate, impossibly human, and the world went quiet. Because when scientists tested these mysterious tracks, the results shattered history, not 5,000 years old, not 10,000, but 23,000 years. That's 10,000 years before humans were even supposed to exist here. Every textbook said the first Americans came much later. Every theory said this wasn't possible, but the ground does not lie, and the sand just rewrote human history. So ask yourself, who walked here before history began? And how did they reach a land no human was ever meant to reach? Stay with me, because we are about to follow those footprints into the oldest human secret in the Americas. The desert did not whisper. It remembered. Before the tourists, the cameras, and the stunned scientists, White Sands was just a blinding stretch of quiet dunes under a merciless New Mexico sun. A place where wind sculpted ancient gypsum into waves of silver-white powder, and time seemed to sleep. Until one morning, it woke up. A park ranger kneels beside strange impressions pressed into hardened earth, shallow oval dents marching across a dry lake bed like ghosts frozen mid-stride. At first, they seem like tracks left by some Ice Age beast. Maybe a giant bison, maybe a mammoth, the kind that once thundered across this land like living mountains. But then the ranger leans closer. 5 toes. A clear heel. A delicate arch, a human footprint. Heart pounding, they trace the shape with a finger. Disbelief prickling their skin. Humans weren't supposed to be here. Not this early. Not by thousands of years. And yet, here it is. A signature in stone. A voice from a world long swallowed by dust. Scientists arrive. Brushes glide across ancient soil. Measurements, photographs, samples, collected in shaking hands. A quiet tension fills the air, the kind that happens right before history changes. Because everyone here knows what this footprint means if it's real. Tests begin. Months pass. Machines hum in silent labs. Every needle, every number, every calibration is double-checked, triple-checked. The results return, and a hush ripples across the room. Not 13,000 years old, not even close, 23,000 years. The room doesn't erupt, it freezes. Eyes widen. Someone whispers, "That's impossible." But the desert does not lie, and its silence just cracked the timeline of humanity wide open. The announcement hits the scientific world like a lightning bolt. 23,000 years. It spreads across conference halls, explodes across research centers, whispers through late-night academic phone calls. For decades, everyone believed the same story. Humans reached the Americas at the end of the Ice Age, around 13,000 years ago. Textbooks printed it, professors defended it, careers were built on it, and now footprints, simple sunken footsteps in ancient mud, threaten to tear down that tower of certainty. Skepticism roars to life, impossible. Contamination error, bad dating, method. Because if the footprints are truly that old, then everything changes. The migration map changes. The origin timeline changes. The story of the first Americans, rewritten from scratch. Scientists return to White Sands, they dig deeper. Not for bones or stone tools. No weapons, no campsites, no carved artifacts. Just footprints. Hundreds of them. Adults walking with purpose. Children darting around. Some tracks heavy with weight. Someone carrying something. Or someone. They sample seeds trapped in ancient clay. Tiny relics of a freshwater plant long gone. Carbon dating repeats. Tests run over and over again. New labs brought in. More scrutiny. No room for doubt. And every time the result comes back the same. 21,000. 23,000. The numbers never break. To strengthen the case, they turn to a second method, luminescence dating. Sand grains reveal the last time sunlight touched them. The answer glows back like a whisper from the Ice Age. Yes, humans were here, long before we ever believed they could be. White Sands isn't just a desert anymore, it's a witness to a chapter of humanity we never knew existed, until now. For months, doubts cling like a final layer of dust. Skeptics circle, hunting for cracks. The White Sands team stays silent, patient, because they know science doesn't bow to convenience. It bends only to evidence. So they go further. They gather 55 independent samples: mud, pollen, seeds, sediment, different depths, different locations, different labs. No overlap. No excuses. And when the results come back, they all say the same thing. 23,000 years again and again. And again, no fringe theory. No lucky guess. No maybe. The tracks become fact. The silence becomes truth. It's a moment that feels almost cinematic. Scientists staring at printouts with wide eyes, a room thick with the weight of realization. Somewhere maybe one of them exhales a shaky breath, because they all know what this means. The first Americans weren't the last-minute survivors history cast them as. They weren't late arrivals, trudging across melting ice. No, they were pioneers, explorers, survivors. Here, long before the world was ready to remember them, and while the bones they left behind vanished, while their tools eroded and their shelters dissolved into dust, their footsteps endured, pressed into ancient mud by children and hunters and mothers moving through their world, thinking of nothing more than the next meal, the next shelter, the next sunrise. Then ice swallowed them, time buried them, and history forgot them, until one day the wind brushed the sand away, and the earth revealed their story step by step. White Sands didn't just give us footprints, it gave us witnesses, tiny echoes of a people who walked before memory, before myth, before history knew their names. For the first time, the desert wasn't empty. It was speaking, and we finally listened. Close your eyes for a moment and picture this land, not as a desert, but as a living world. The sun is softer. A vast, shimmering lake, Lake Otero, stretches across the horizon. Wind ripples through tall grass, and the air is alive with movement. Herds of mammoths lumbering near the water, giant ground sloths scraping bark from trees, and flocks of prehistoric birds cutting through a colder sky. This isn't a barren wasteland. It's a thriving Ice Age oasis, and walking along its muddy shoreline. Humans, not the cavemen cartoons taught us to imagine, not grunting, club-dragging brutes, but parents, children, hunters, gatherers, people like us, with worries, dreams, routines, with laughter and exhaustion and warmth. Their footprints tell stories tools never could. Tiny tracks skipping ahead, a child splashing near the water's edge, larger prints following. Slower, heavier, a caretaker burdened by something weighty. Food, supplies, a toddler resting tired legs in their arms. There are footprints that slip, recover balance. Press forward again, as if someone stumbled in wet clay and laughed it off. Every step feels intimate, human, real. They didn't know we would one day uncover their path. They didn't know a future species of scientists, armed with lasers and microscopes, would pore over every heel strike, every toe spread. They walked simply because life demanded it, searching for water, gathering food, moving with the seasons. We don't see their faces, but we feel their presence. We don't hear their voices, but we hear their footsteps. Steady, determined, alive, and suddenly, this isn't archaeology, it's a reunion. They are no longer primitive humans. They are us standing barefoot at the edge of time. Imagine waking up in this ancient world. Cold morning air stings your lungs. Frost clings to the grass. The smell of damp earth rises with the first light. Somewhere in the distance, a mammoth bellows, deep echoing ancient thunder rolling across the lake bed. Wolves the size of small horses prowl just beyond sight, their breath steaming in the dawn. And you? You stretch, shake off the night, check the air for danger. There is no shelter of stone, no walls to protect you, only instinct, your small human group, and the knowledge your ancestors carried in their bones. This was not a world built for the fragile, but somehow humans endured here. They moved silently, respecting the land like a living force. They read the wind as if it were language, tracked prey not by sight, but by the faintest shift in mud or grass. They knew which seeds meant nourishment and which meant death. Their stories weren't written. They were spoken, sung by firelight, carried on breath and memory, and yet even in danger, there was softness. Children chasing each other through reeds, mothers soothing crying infants with gentle hums older than language, young hunters practicing spear throws at tree trunks, laughing when they missed, old ones sitting close to the fire, sharing wisdom carved by years and scars. The world around them was fierce, but so were they. Not with brute strength, but with hope, curiosity, unity. Every footprint we find is not just a mark, it is a heartbeat, a moment between survival and wonder, a reminder that even surrounded by giants, humans found time to live, not just endure. They weren't lost wanderers on the edge of the world. They were home. Archaeology can show us what happened. Footprints show us who it happened to. And in white sands, emotion lingers in the soil. Some footprints run alongside ancient sloth tracks, suggesting a chase or perhaps a stalking hunt. Not reckless, but strategic. Humans here didn't just survive. They adapted. They planned, they learned. In one stretch of prints, a child's small steps disappear, only to reappear behind adult prints. A simple pattern with a powerful meaning. Parent lifted their child, carried them when little legs grew tired, held them close in a world filled with teeth and ice. That moment, frozen in mud, could have been yesterday. Another trail shows hesitation, a foot digging deeper into clay, toes gripping hard, the mark of someone pausing, scanning the horizon, sensing danger we can no longer see. A predator nearby? A storm rolling in. We will never know, and yet the tension is still there, pressed into the earth like a shiver trapped in stone. These were not faceless nomads wandering blindly through wilderness. They were storytellers. Parents, explorers, protectors, people who loved, feared, dreamed. Humans not defined by what they lacked, tools, cities, writing, but by what they had: courage, connection, a will to move forward. Step by fragile step, civilization did not invent humanity. Humanity invented civilization. And as the footprints fade into distance, you can almost hear it. Tiny laughter on the wind splashes in shallow water. Hushed voices warning children not to stray too far. A community alive in the rhythm of nature, unaware that 23,000 years later, strangers would kneel before their tracks in awe. They did not leave monuments, they left moments. And somehow that feels more powerful. Here's the problem. A problem so big it shook archaeology to its core. If humans stood in white sands 23,000 years ago, how did they get there? For decades, the story was simple. Neat, tidy, comfortable in textbooks. Humans crossed a land bridge from Siberia into Alaska around 13,000 years ago, then walked south through ice-free corridors as the glaciers melted. Clean, logical, done, except those footprints laugh at that timeline, because during the height of the Ice Age, when those humans walked across Lake Otero, the entire northern half of North America was locked beneath miles of ice. Frozen mountains stretching from ocean to ocean. No grass, no game, no open passage. A wall of ice so vast it reshaped the planet. So how did humans get thousands of miles south into the heart of North America before that ice melted? For scientists, this wasn't just a puzzle. It was a challenge to everything they thought they knew. When evidence contradicts a theory, you don't ignore the evidence, you rewrite the theory. Multiple possibilities emerge, each bold, each controversial. Maybe humans arrived much earlier than we thought. Long before the ice sealed the continent, maybe they found hidden routes through a frozen world, valleys carved by rivers, narrow seasonal gaps between glaciers, or maybe, just maybe, they didn't walk here at all. What if the first Americans sailed? Not in giant ships, but in small, simple boats, hugging the ancient Pacific coast, following kelp forests rich with fish and shellfish, drifting into a new world one shoreline at a time. Suddenly, the map of the ancient world doesn't look fixed. It looks alive, open, full of possibilities. And humanity, it looks far more adventurous than history ever gave it credit for. Picture the Earth 23,000 years ago. The oceans are lower, revealing hidden shorelines, rocky beaches stretching farther than anything we see today. The Pacific coast isn't just a boundary. It's a lifeline, a ribbon of food, kelp, fish, shellfish, stretching from Asia all the way into the Americas. Could ancient humans have followed this living highway? Imagine small skin-covered boats gliding over cold waves, families moving with the tides, children bundled in furs, staring wide-eyed at seabirds circling overhead, fires crackling in coastal camps, storytelling echoing against the sound of surf. To most of modern history, this idea sounded impossible. But here's the truth. Humans have always mastered water faster than we mastered land. By the time these footprints were made, Our species had already crossed open seas to reach Australia, 60,000 years earlier. They navigated islands, fished, built boats sturdy enough to face unknown horizons. So why couldn't they have followed the Pacific to the Americas? Still, some scientists propose another daring idea. Maybe they came before the ice closed the continent, slipping south before glaciers sealed the gate. If so, they didn't just survive the Ice Age. They endured it, adapted through it, passed knowledge through generations like fire carried in a clay bowl. And then there is the most haunting possibility, that these early people weren't a single migration, but one of many waves of humanity, forgotten by time, erased by ice, ash, and extinction, except for the shallow marks they left in mud. Preserved by a miracle of geology, their story was not lost because they left nothing. It was lost because we stopped looking until white sands forced us to look again. In science, revolutions rarely explode. They accumulate. A stone tool in Mexico once dismissed as too old to be real. A campsite in Chile dated earlier than expected. Marine shells on ancient coasts suggesting seafaring, long before textbooks allowed it, and now foot-shaped time capsules pressed into prehistoric clay. Together, these clues whisper a daring truth. Human history in the Americas didn't begin with a single brave group crossing a frozen land bridge. It began with many journeys, many experiments, many forgotten explorers testing at the edges of a world still forming. Some came by land before the ice rose. Some hugged the roaring Pacific in fragile boats. Some traveled inland, through valleys between glaciers, temporary windows opened by climate, then sealed forever. These weren't accidents, they were decisions, signs of curiosity, courage, desperation, the same forces that eventually pushed our species into every corner of Earth and the people of White Sands. They were proof that humans didn't just arrive here. They thrived here. For thousands of years before mammoths disappeared, before Clovis hunters carved stone into legend, before maps, before myths, before memory. They walked trails no one drew, hunted beasts no one names anymore, held their children close against winds we can't imagine, and left nothing behind, except footsteps. Footsteps so fragile they should have vanished. Yet they endured long enough for us to find them, long enough to force us to rethink who we are, because the story of humanity isn't a straight line. It's a series of footprints in shifting sand, and with each discovery, the trail grows longer, deeper, more wondrous. We didn't start where we thought, and we are far older, braver and more restless than history ever believed. Most people fade from history without a trace. No monuments, no carved names, no written stories, but the people of White Sands. They left the simplest mark a human can leave, a footprint, and somehow it outlived ice, storms, extinction, and time itself. Think about that. In a world where entire civilizations vanish, a child's playful step in the mud became the spark that forced us to rewrite the past. Their legacy isn't stone or steel, it is presence, a moment of life, preserved across 23,000 years, and maybe that's the quiet lesson they offer. History is not built by the loudest among us. Sometimes, it's written by those who simply kept walking.